Let me just go back to here. So once again, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday, and thank you for joining for another session of Azure Power Lunch. Just as we always do, quick disclaimer: this call is being recorded, and we will place the recording on our YouTube channel. So if you don't want to be recorded, time to drop off. Okay. So first of all, uh, today we are going to be talking about Azure DB deployment option, flexible server deployment option for MySQL and Postgres. This is was announced at the Ignite, and this is kind of a gives you um, an idea of the direction the product is heading, providing flexibility. So why this option? So first of all, as these offerings are being used by different developers, consumers and organizations and customers, what's happening is they're demanding more and more flexibility. So they want to have the same flexibility that they have when they deploy MySQL or PostgreSQL on a virtual machine. But at the same time, what they're asking is the same type of ease of use and kind of a hands-off approach that they have with a PaaS service. So all the kind of a luxuries of a PaaS service, but at the same time, all the flexibility of running a database in a VM where they can control different parameters, tweak certain things, and things like that. So that's where this flexible server deployment option is born. Provide you a simplified, quick to deploy experience with the ability of max control and still in a PaaS model. Okay. And once again, this is in public preview for MySQL and PostgreSQL. So just a quick overview of the features. You can deploy in the public multi-tenant model as well as you can deploy inside a VNet. Both options are available. In addition, all the server parameters are now, a number of server parameters are now available. So what you can do is you can go in and you can tweak those parameters. And it has first class access through CLI. So a number of open source database users, they had kind of, they did not feel very comfortable going into the portal to change certain things, then go back to the CLI. So a number of things are now available through CLI. So they don't have to switch, kind of have a dual experience. So that is there. Then the ability to have custom maintenance windows. So you have now ability to, like, as we are deploying updates, you can nominate the windows when you are more comfortable for those database updates or maintenance updates to be deployed. Azure system updates. And what we are doing is we are running it on a Ubuntu Linux system. So you know what type of OS that it's going to be running on. So that's a kind of a part of the flexible server. Okay. But at the same time, you don't lose some of the things that comes with a PaaS service, like deployment across zones. So wherever Azure availability zones are available, you can deploy these servers across availability zones to get high availability option. And at the same time, you can, if you want, you can deploy your apps closer to the zones so they have to kind of any reducing the latency between your app and database. So that's so you're not losing that thing. So once again, the as I said before, the promise of flexible server is having the same PaaS capabilities that you have, but with more flexibility that you get if you deploy this database on a VM. So I'm just going to repeat this thing again and again. And in terms of the end-to-end deployment experience, you have the full CLI support to deploy it, and and that basically allows you to run it, allow it to run it, directly from CLI, spin the entire experience. And one big thing that developers needed was that they don't use these database all the time. If you're using it in development environment, you may be using it while you're developing maybe 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. So they don't want to pay it afterwards. So that's where you have the support for bustable. So we will take a look in the demo. And also you have the ability to stop the server. So at that time, you're not paying for the compute. You're only paying for the storage. So that's a big improvement on, or kind of a big differentiator between the other more dedicated models of mode of deployment for these servers. Okay. So this is how it looks like when you are deploying a flexible server in a single availability zone. So let's think of it. It's deployed in East US. You have your flexible server, which is running on an Ubuntu Linux VM. And by the way, that's how it gets deployed. It runs on. We are basically spinning up a Ubuntu Linux VM on which we are deploying the bits, and you have premium storage where your data and logs are stored, and then we do automatic backup up to 7 days. You can change it to 35 days, or at the same time, you can use Azure Backup as well for this thing. So, I mean, if you want to go take it further. So there are certain things that are baked in, and if you want to take it to the next level, you can do that as well. Um, at the same time, you have the ability to do replication. So you can do, if you do zone redundant HA architecture with flexible server, you can do this type of deployment where it is deployed in multiple zones, and it will do synchronous replication between the replica. I mean, between two replicas. So your changes are always stay in sync. And if you fail over one zone goes away, it will automatically be switched to the other standby. Okay, so that's once again, as I said, you don't lose any of the PaaS capability by, you know, and at the same time, you gain a lot of flexibility that you have with deploying, MySQL VM. Okay. I thought there was a question. Okay, so let's take a look at a quick demo. So what we're gonna do is we just gonna go in and take a look at how we can do create a database. So I'm just gonna look from the portal, and also we will look at from the CLI side of things. Okay, so I'm just gonna go Azure Database for MySQL. That's the two options you have now. You have a single server, which is, we have been using that option before, and this is the flexible. I just want to show you one other one for Postgres. So with Postgres, you have single server, you have Citus, the hyperscale, you have Azure Arc enabled, and then you have flexible server. So both these options are there. So let's start with the flexible server option. Pretty standard vanilla stuff, nothing to report there. I'm going to do APL ASC, just pick that resource group. And look here, this is very interesting. When you say configure server, you are basically defining what type of compute you're going to be using. And if you pick like burstable, so you can, pick a very small server, B1 or B2. And depending on how much storage you want, you can reduce the storage amount. You can use it as low as 32. For this one, you can use as low as 32 GB. And like approximately that's how much you're going to be paying for this. Okay. Just keep in mind, if you are using burstable, zone redundancy is not available. But as soon as you use kind of high availability, and you can use zone redundancy. So let's say we use this general purpose, and let's save this thing. Then we can come in and we can use a redundancy, and we can say, okay, what zone preference we have. In this case, we don't have any, so we can pick whatever zone redundancy we want to have. We can also pick the server version. So there are two server versions available. We can pick one of those and go from there. And let's go next. That's where it gets interesting. Um, in the case of public access, it will be deployed in the Azure multi-tenant environment. And what you will have to do is you will have to whitelist IP addresses. Basically, put those IP addresses which can access your database, just like you do any standard. Just like we have done it in the past before in the past with SQL, where we say, okay, allow these IP addresses to access. That's you will do. Or what you can do is you can do this here. You can say deploy it in a private VNet. So basically, it's going to deploy in a virtual network. Just keep in mind, in order to do that, you will have to create a subnet and delegate that subnet to this flexible server. So just to want to show it to you here. So let's go in here. Okay, so let's go here. And where is our resource group? I'm going to go to the VNet. And if I go into the subnets, as you can see here, I have dedicated this subnet. This is a delegated this subnet to whatever, and you have to do it before. Like if you have a subnet where you haven't did that delegation, it won't be able to pick it up. So you have to go in and so that's something you have to take care of. Create the subnet and then delegate it. If you want to do Postgres flexible server, do this with Postgres. If you want to do MySQL, do it with MySQL, and that's it. Once you do that, then you can use it, and it will show up here, and you can pick that particular subnet. Okay. Any questions, folks? Okay. So that's how the creation experience look like. What I'm going to show you, since this takes a few minutes to create the database, I have a database that is already created. So I'm going to go in here in this resource group, and let me show you the database that I already have. Okay. So this is MySQL database, flexible database that I have created. As you can see, I'm using burstable V1, one core small database, good for development, pretty standard vanilla stuff. I want to give, direct your attention to this. This is a stop button. Once I click that button, then my database will become at that point. At that point, my database. Sorry, guys. Sorry for the technical snafu. Okay. So what will happen is once I do that, my database will stop. It will not incur any compute charges, but if there is any storage, I will still be paying for that. Okay, or if there's any backup, I will be paying for the backup as well. Okay, so that's one of the piece of the flexible um, um, model. And when I say burstable, if you're not familiar with burstable compute in Azure storage, what burstable compute allows you to do is it kind of accumulate your compute consumption. So if you're using below your compute level, it will kind of keep a track of it. It's like the money being deposited in your bank, and then you can use that accumulated compute when you encounter the load. So that's what it is. A, you know, kind of a quick summary of that. So you can use that as well as a part of the flexible server. So what will happen is if the time when there is no load on the database, it will kind of have that compute there deposited, and when the load comes in, it goes above that, it will take that accumulated compute capacity, and that's how kind of make it more cost effective. So that's the flexible piece. And then, please.
The break-even point's what, about 20% CPU usage for that? Is that about accurate for burstable?
Break-even point.
When I would use a burstable, compared to a regular, I shouldn't be using more than about 20% CPU. Over like a 24-hour period.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the exact answer. Yeah, I'll have to check. Probably, get me offline. Yeah, yes, there is a break-even point. You're right. And normally, if you have like a VM with burstable compute, it will show you like how your compute is going, kind of give you an idea like how you're using it. Okay, if you are running that for some time. But that's a good question, and I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. Get to me offline, and I will happy to address that. In terms of compute and storage, you can change the model. So let's say that you started with a database initially with a burstable compute, and then the need has changed. You need more compute. Okay, you can change it, and that's that's where the flexibility comes in. That's where if you're running on a VM, that you will do. You will just upgrade the SKU of the VM, go to a higher SKU. And here, that's what's happening, that you are going in and you are basically just go in and upgrade your underlying VM. That's all you're doing. And you're getting higher compute. Maybe what's happening is that you were doing development, then you have to run some tests on it. You need more compute. You upgrade it for a month and then downgrade. Okay. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, now with a quick question on the compute, you said it will kind of store if you don't use the compute, and then it can use it when needed. So what is the unit? For example, if you are using 2 vCore, how does it say that you're not using the compute, and then how does it kind of keep that in track?
Okay, so this is, first of all, this is only for burstable.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. If you're using general purpose, then you're just staying for that, even though Okay, for burstable, what happens is, I think there is a level, it charges you for certain kind of a CPU level. If you are below that level or below that consumption, and it's kind of a journal overview. I should have done a little more research on the burstable. But in any case, if you are below that certain level, it will start accumulating those ACUs for you. And once you go above that, Azure Compute Units, it will start kind of using from that, and then and that's how it works. So probably, we may cover it in a separate session for burstable.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So that's just keep in mind that is only true for burstable. If you use general purpose, no. At that time, you're just paying flat out for the transmission charge, and you're capped at that capacity. There's no burst mode there. Okay. And secondly, high availability. Just keep in mind if you haven't turned the high availability on at the creation of the database, you cannot turn it on. It can only be done at the provisioning level. Okay, so just keep that in mind. As far as I know, it can only be done at the provisioning level. And then this is the backup. So 7 days, and it can go up to 35 days if you want. In terms of networking, right now it is inside a VNet. As you can see, it's a private VNet approach. It's inside a VNet. So any resources that are inside that VNet or are paired with that VNet or like on-prem connected to other networks through express route or site-to-site VPN, they can access it. So that's just keep that in mind. These are all the connection string, how you are connecting from it, nothing much to see here. This is to me is very, should be very exciting for developers. So these are all the parameters that you can change or update or, modify to play around with this stuff. There are some which are kind of disabled, but there are a number of them that they can be tweaked, and that's the option to do that. I want to quickly show maintenance window. So this is system. If you just want to go with by default system managed schedule, so it will be system managed. It will be between region time at night. But if you want to do custom, you can do it custom. That's totally depends on you. I want to go talk about high availability. So once again, it can only be, first of all, you can not change it for burstable, but it has to be turned on at the provisioning time. You cannot change it. I learned it the hard way. You cannot change it after provisioning. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. And replication, that's another option. You can create a replica and then just do synchronous replication to that, and that's how you can do replication between databases. Two databases, maybe you are using one for read only and one for read write, and one is serving reports. So that's another option here. Okay, any questions? Okay, so I have, okay, now I am in a VM, which is deployed in a same VNet where this database is deployed in a separate subnet, of course. And I am running MySQL Workbench. And as you can see, let me just close this. Okay, and what I can do is I can connect to it, and look, it connects just like any other MySQL database. I can go in and I can run the queries. And at the same time, at the CLI level, there is a CLI command. Yeah, you can note down the connection string. Anyways, I'm going to be deleting the database. So this is how this is in in with MySQL flexible server. This is the command line option. And if I do help, it shows you all different options that you can do with MySQL flexible server. So if I want to see all the parameters, it's going to show all the parameters to me. So I can go in here. I can say parameter and show, and it's going to show all the parameters. Oops. Let me see. I think I have a sorry. I thought I have a command in the cache. So, and what is the name of the SQL server? Okay, no, I think it's in a different window. Sorry, it's in this window. Here, I can list all my flexible server parameters. So it's going to list all the parameters of this server, and so I don't have to go to the UI anymore. I can just go in and I can make all the changes here in those parameters. I can update those. I can see whatever I can update, and I can tweak with them, just like I can do on a server that is running on a VM. Okay. So we have a couple of minutes. Any questions?
And Naveed, I dropped a little bit of information on burstable VMs in the chat.
Thank you.
Anybody's
I really
interested.
appreciate it. Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And Navid, what is the best use case for Flex Server?
I think it is, first of all, developer scenarios where you are developing against MySQL instead of spinning up in a VM, spin it up like that. Do your testing. You can turn it off, turn it on as needed. You can change the SKUs. So based on how you are developing or if you're doing testing against it. So that's kind of very flexible. And at the same time, for production scenarios, I mean, you need the flexibility of a database running on a VM where you can tweak different parameters, but at the same time, all the nice things that come with the PaaS service, that's where it comes into picture. So yeah, I think it's going to be very compelling for different uh, customers to look at it or users to look at it and see how they can kind of what would the best option for them. This one or a MySQL option that they had before.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, folks, just FYI, next week's session will be our last session for the year, and then we will start sometime next year, 2021. So next week's session is the last session, the session on 11th, and then we will take a break for holidays and come back in 2021. So thank you very much again for joining this session, Azure Power Lunch session, and see you next week.
Hey, Navid, a quick question, if I may.
Please. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Is there any IDE you would recommend to use as a developer against the MySQL Flex Server?
Any IDE that you use for MySQL, like MySQL Workbench that I normally use, okay, or a number of people still go with command line. I mean, I know it sometimes feels strange, like how I'm used to SQL Management Studio or Azure Data Studio, but most people still use command line. So yeah, whatever you're comfortable with. As I said, it has full SQL, MySQL compatibility. It's running, open source MySQL, so there is no issue there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, folks, and I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and see you next week.
Thanks, Naveed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Naveed.